Fred Fleitz is a former CIA analyst, senior vice president for policy and programs with the Center for Security Policy. Hey, Fred, welcome to the show. How are you this morning?
Pretty good, Joe. Great to be here.
Well, we're very, very pleased that you joined us because I'm confused. The whole Russia probe thing, man. It looks like a distraction. You're a former CIA analyst. What's your take on this whole Russia probe, Fred?
Well, look, when I was an analyst in the 1980s, I briefly worked in an office called the Active Measures Office.
Yeah.
And what it did was look at efforts by the Soviets to use propaganda to undermine Western democracies. And we used to find instances of fake peace conferences paid for by the KGB. And you know what? The Democrats didn't care because they were targeted to undermine President Reagan. We're seeing the same thing today. The Democrats did not care about this efforts by the Russians to meddle in our democracy, which they've been doing for decades, until it affected the Democrats. And
very interesting. Tell me what you saw. What did you see again back in the 80s, man? The
KGB would fund fake peace conferences to undermine the Reagan administration and the United States.
Wow.
Now, Putin used to be a KGB officer.
Oh, yeah.
This is something the Russians and the Soviets have been doing for decades. And Obama knew this throughout his administration, that there were foreign nations, not just Russia, but also China, Iran, North Korea, that are trying to mess with our democracy. It's always going on. It isn't a surprise to me that when there was an investigation on the election, we're going to find some benevolent foreign actors trying to mess with the election. But we now know that this effort by the Russians had no collusion whatsoever with the Trump campaign and was far too small to affect the election outcome. So, frankly, the case is closed. Let's shut down this investigation. The president should pardon anyone in his circle that was involved, and let's move on.
You're calling for President Trump to pardon anyone convicted as a result of the Mueller probe, yes?
No, only those in his circle. Look, if there's characters who were selling fake internet IDs or involved in fraud or bank fraud,
understood.
That's different.
Sure.
I'm thinking like Jared Kushner. I bet there's some form Jared Kushner didn't fill out with his businesses, and he's parking tickets, library, missing library books. Let's just pardon it.
And then what happened about this lawyer who took a guilty plea yesterday? What was going on there, for crying out loud?
You know the old saying: there's a New York judge. A good prosecutor could indict a ham sandwich.
Yep.
Frankly, you got to be careful when you talk to the FBI. What was General Flynn doing talking to the FBI without an attorney? And he was interviewed by an attorney, by an FBI officer who was so extremely hostile to the Trump administration. Is it a surprise they found something to indict him for?
Yeah, but and just to make sense of it, you can't make sense of it, Fred. But really, Fred Fleitz, former CIA analyst with us, senior vice president for policy and programs with the Center for Security Policy. It's like they bought Facebook ads. So now is this the impetus for the Russia probe? They bought Facebook ads. Like that was what insults me, Fred, as an American citizen. They think that would have influenced us, I guess, to vote for Donald Trump. I'm so confused. Like, they think we're that dumb, really, Fred?
Well, I do think that this should be investigated. We shouldn't stand for the Russians messing our election, even if it didn't have an effect. But look, the Russians spent about $100,000 in Facebook ads before the election. Both campaigns spent a total of $81 million.
Exactly.
These ads didn't have any effect whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. And doesn't China try to meddle into our election, and other countries meddle into our election in a cyber, in a cyber kind of warfare way? Isn't it? I mean, why are we so fixated on this Russian thing? Just seems like a narrative that the Democrats won't let go.
They're constantly trying to meddle. For example, there was an article a few years ago that the Wall Street Journal ran that said Russia, China, and Iran reportedly have engaged in cyber warfare to place some kind of spyware or cyber warfare programs in our power grid that we still don't understand.
Yeah,
what did Obama do about it? Nothing.
Yeah, man. That's always it always scares me in that regard. Hey, so let me a couple quick questions before we let you go, Fred. We appreciate it. Should the president fire Mueller?
I think it would be better not to do that. When I say pardon people, I'm not kidding, although I'm prepared to wait a little bit until these people, we find out the disposition of these people. I think it would be better for the president just to say, look, this investigation is a fraud. It was actually begun by the Democrats before they knew there would be any actual Russian meddling, even though meddling doesn't matter. Yeah. I think I would just let the investigation take its course.
Let it self-destruct. Should the president talk with Mueller?
I don't think so. I think it's going to it's going to be a perjury trap. I don't see any reason to do that. This investigation's a fraud, and I think the president should not fire Mueller, but frankly give it as little of his time as he has to.
Yeah, and shouldn't Rod Rosenstein have recused himself from this whole investigation?
There's simply no doubt. And I mean, look, the real investigation here should be efforts by the Clinton campaign and the DNC to meddle in the election, to leak intelligence to damage another candidate, to spy on another candidate using our intelligence agencies, and to meddle with the Russians. That's what really should be investigated.
Yeah, and how do you think Mike Pompeo's doing as director of the CIA, Fred?
He's a friend of mine. I think he's been great. I think he's really been one of the president's best appointees. When he goes before Congress and speaks about various threats to our country, I think he's someone who we really can trust. He's telling it straight. And when we hear these idiotic articles in the newspaper that the president isn't getting his presidential daily brief and isn't being briefed, I talked to Pompeo. It's not true. It's not true.
Hey, will you tell Mr. Pompeo, please? Just he's an Italian guy. Just a couple guys from Jersey over to North Korea. It'll be over in 2 days. I keep saying that. All right, you know what I mean?
I will tell him maybe he'll come on your show.
Yeah. Oh, listen, if you get the director on our show, we love having you on the show, Fred. But if you get the director there, we appreciate it. Fred Fleitz, please come back again. Keep us very, very posted on all of this. Would you do that?
Will do. Great to be here.
Thanks so much, Fred. Great to have you here. Fred Fleitz is a former CIA analyst, senior vice president for policy and programs with the Center for Security Policy.